Okay, so we is it okay now? Okay, yeah. So we start the program formally. Sorry again for being late for 10 minutes. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone, and Shubho Vasanto. So this is the first day of Falgun in the Bengali month. You can see the color in the campus. I'm sure if you can get, especially our guest, after the event, some time, you'll be finding that the campus is buzzing and the students are they're very excited with so many events outside this seminar room. So yeah, so again, I wish you all with this special day of our Bangladeshi Bengali culture. So it is a pleasure to see you all here today at our seminar on Bangladesh's approach towards emerging alliances in Asia, which is being organized by the Center for Peace Studies of South Asian Institute of Policy and Governance of North-South University. I'm Professor Tawfiq Haq, Director of South Asian Institute of Policy and Governance, and also the current chair of the Department of Political Science of Sociology of North-South University. I would like to extend my gratitude to our special guest in attendance today, retired Rear Admiral Mohammad Khurshid Alam. He is currently the Secretary of the Maritime Affairs Unit at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Bangladesh. Also in attendance today is our session chair, Professor Ismail Hossain, Pro Vice Chancellor, who will be joining a little bit late. And our seminar, we have a very kind of a highly reputed panelists and discussion today. And probably the size is too heavy. But the first, I just introduce the three of the panelists. We have Dr. Mohammad Joshimuddin, Associate Professor of North-South University. We have the second panelist, Professor Shahidul Haq from SIPG, NSU, and also former Secretary of Bangladesh. And also we have with us virtually Dr. Mahabubul Haq, Faculty of Law and International Relations at University of Sultan Zainal Abidin in Malaysia. Our panelists will be accompanied by several discussants and also very important discussants that we have with us. We have His Excellency Mr. Iwama Kimunori, Ambassador of Japan to Bangladesh. His Excellency Charles Whitley, Ambassador and Head of Delegation of the European Union of Bangladesh. Dr. Mohammad Safwat Hussain, Senior Fellow here at South Asian Institute of Policy and Governance. Sanjida Shahabuddin, a Research Fellow at the Bangladesh Institute of International and Strategic Studies, BISS. Dr. Raymond Lu, Assistant Professor of Political Science at NSU. And finally, Dr. Lailufari Yasmin, Professor and Chair at the Department of International Relations at the University of Dhaka. I will give a brief introduction of all the panelists and introduction while their turn will come to speak. You got a chance to know about an institute, the South Asian Institute of Policy and Governance. I'm not going to repeat those things, just to make a kind of a recapitulation that this institute is one of the main think tanks of North-South University, and also within Bangladesh is the only institute which is working on policy and governance. And we have regional master's program for civil servants from Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Malaysia, and other countries. And also we have executive masters. We have regular training programs for the civil servants, as well as the other professionals. And also Institute is extensively engaged in research and publication related to public policy, governance, peace, conflict, geopolitics, and migration issues. Just to give you a brief idea that the importance that we put on research and publication, that till now we have published 13 books and a very good number of journal articles from international publishing houses, 11 working papers, 14 policy briefs, and series of case studies. Also, we conduct national and South Asian regional survey with partnership with regional universities. So that's now come back to the topic today. On today's seminar, I'd like to begin by highlighting the sheer importance of the arena that we will discuss, both in the Pacific as well as BRI and also ASEAN. Question might be raised that why we brought the discussion on IPS, BRI, and ASEAN in a single platform. As far my knowledge, this has not been happened before. We have so many seminars and webinars separately on BRI or IPS. So we did it because SIPG believes that Bangladesh should formulate its own policy on the basis of looking into all the emerging alliances in Asia, especially IPS and BRI together. Any isolated discussion and debate on a single alliance might miss the comprehensive picture of potentiality and challenges posed by these alliances for Bangladesh. So with this view, in this national seminar, we will look at the following three objectives are there. One is that identifying various alliances in the making in the larger Asian region and the geopolitical and geoeconomic implication behind these emerging alliances. Second objective of the seminar today is analyze the dynamics of both Indo-Pacific, BRI, and also ASEAN and its evolving nature with the context of Bangladesh. And finally, the attempt will be made to design approaches and policies of Bangladesh towards the emerging alliances, in particular in the Indo-Pacific and the BRI. So with that note, I will start the program now. And I would just let you know that since there are so many speakers and discussions, I will be a little bit strict to maintaining time. So please bear with me. First, I would like to invite our Dean of School of Humanities and Social Science, Professor Abdul Rab Khan, to give the opening remarks. Professor Khan's area of interest basically branched out to the non-traditional security, including human security, geopolitics, and foreign policy. And Professor Khan has published articles in scientific journals, book chapters, and edited several volumes in the field of security and conflicts. So over to you, Professor Khan, and your time is 5 minutes, sir.
Special guest to this program, Rear Admiral Retired Mohammad Khurshid Alam, Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and distinguished maritime expert of the country. Three distinguished panelists, Ambassador Shahidul Haq, Professor Fellow of North-South University, Professor Maul Haq, he probably will be joining us online. And we have also Dr. Joshimuddin of North-South University. A constellation of prominent discussions today include Excellencies Ambassador of Japan to Bangladesh, Ambassador and Head of Delegation of European Union to Bangladesh, Brigadier General Shakawat Hussain, and Professor Lailu Yasmin of Dhaka University. Dear faculty colleagues and my dear students, ladies and gentlemen, my heartiest welcome to all of you this morning to this national seminar on Bangladesh's approach to the emerging alliances in Asia. Ladies and gentlemen, the gravity of the ongoing century is irreversibly shifting toward Asia and the Pacific. This is an area that is receiving heightened global interests across the political, economic, and security spheres. This combined region, home of second and third largest economies of the world, most significant trade routes of the world, stride the Asia-Pacific region. It also at the same time contains some of the greatest national security hotspots, including Taiwan and the South China Sea. It is an ideal home for studying everything from economics, human development, to democratization, to authoritarianism, and separatist movements in different parts of this region. With shifting importance, the identity of the region is also changing from Asia-Pacific to Indo-Pacific, and latest nomenclature is Quad, depending on whose perspective you are talking of. The larger Asia-Pacific region has several cross-cutting political, economic, security alliances, which will come out in the discussion of this panel through the panelists. It will be difficult to view these alliances from geopolitical or geoeconomic binary because the trade, security, and politics are often intertwined. In a competing phenomenon, we are also witnessing the emergence and very strong surge of BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. This makes approach to emerging alliances in Asia for countries like Bangladesh very difficult. So far, Bangladesh has been making a maneuver of sorts among the key players of these alliances, namely USA, China, and India, Japan, Russia, and to an extent, ASEAN countries. But with global politics turning increasingly conflictual on Ukraine-Russia war in the front, and also the shadow of the Cold War politics looming very large in US-China relationship, Bangladesh's balancing game and tightrope walking may turn more precarious in the coming days. The key players at times are taking advantage by putting vital national security issues of Bangladesh, like Rohingya repatriation, to the back foot. In key economic areas like trade, investment, energy, perhaps we can bring to the fore issues of economic diplomacy rather than geopolitics. However, in issues like Rohingya repatriation, where security and geopolitics matter, a mix of aggressive bilateral and multilateral diplomacy should be played effectively. These are some of my absolutely preliminary thoughts rather than anticipating any deliberation of these distinguished panelists and discussions. Three panelists, as has been introduced by Professor Tobik, will be followed by discussions of a very high standard. Of course, we look forward to hear the insightful speech from our special guest, Rear Admiral Khurshid Alam. Thanks, SIPG, for giving this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Abdul Khan. Now we directly go to the panel. So probably you are aware that we have differentiated this whole session into three parts. The working session one will be dealing with Bangladesh and Indo-Pacific. The session two will be Bangladesh and Belt and Road Initiative. And session three will be Bangladesh and ASEAN. So the first session, the key presenter will be Dr. Joshimuddin Ahmed. So I would like to request him to start his presentation. So Dr. Joshim is an associate professor of the Department of Political Science and Sociology, and he has published several book chapters, scholarly articles on peace and conflict resolution, interstate relations, and refugee issues in peer-reviewed journals, including SAGE and others. His research interests include refugee studies, governance issues, conflict management, peacekeeping, human security, interstate relations, Japan-SAARC, and China-South Asia relations. So over to you, Dr. Joshim, and your time is 15 minutes.
Assalamu alaikum and very good morning to all of you. Abong Shubha Boshanto, first day of spring. The theme of today's seminar is so important. And it is my great pleasure to see a number of learned, informed personalities, excellences here. And as you see, alliance, actually, since the ancient time, nations formed alliance for gaining their interest, for protecting their sovereignty and territorial integrity. It is a natural phenomenon, and this process will continue. I'm going to present Bangladesh and Indo-Pacific. As you all know, that Indo-Pacific is a new alliance in making, and Bangladesh is looking at the Indo-Pacific region. Indo-Pacific is a geopolitical space, as you see on the map. Yes, thank you. So, two great oceans in the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean merge, and many nations, including some great powers, are also residing here. The term free and open in the Pacific is first coined by the late Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and it is a new concept for the new age. We understand the importance of this new concept, new strategy, when Biden said, President Biden said in a Quad meeting that the future of each of our nations and indeed the world depends on the Indo-Pacific. So what are the characteristics of Indo-Pacific and why it is emerged? Indo-Pacific is the home of the world, half of the world's population, and is also home of the 60% global GDP. And we see the 7 of world's 10 largest standing armies are there, and 5 declared nuclear powers. The advanced and very sophisticated naval forces present is also evident in this large region. Why it is emerged? I think more or less everybody know that the US, the most powerful country in the world, with his allies, initiated this, strategy for an open, connected, prosperous, and resilient Indo-Pacific region. And we also know, as it is mentioned in the White House fact sheet, that it is also for countering China's rise and also, the Belt Road Initiative, as US and its allies believe that China spans its aggression across the globe. So IPS has taken 2 initiatives, security and economic in nature. And the security one is Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. In short, we call it Quad. And 4 members, Japan, India, Australia, and America. All of them are democratic countries and believe in rule-based international order. On the other hand, if we focus on the Indo-Pacific economic framework, it is an economic initiative taken by Joe Biden, and it is really a smart move because any economic framework, any economic initiative was absent during Trump era. And many of the ASEAN countries and, in the Pacific countries, they appreciate this in the Pacific economic framework. So this framework actually has 4 pillars, and it looks really great. If you go through the frameworks is on the nets, and but it is actually in abstract form now. If it is the ideas given here are implemented, then it's like a dream. It will be really great. But nothing is on the table right now. This pillar emphasizes on connected economy, e-commerce, trade, cooperation, supply chain commitments, clean economy, and fair economy. Particularly when I see that money laundering, anti-bribery regimes, and crackdown on corruption is also emphasized in this framework. Especially when I see corruption, which is a disease here, perhaps the most, the biggest challenge we are facing. Before I talk about whether Bangladesh should join IPF or Quad, let's see actually why Bangladesh is so important strategically for the great powers. Well, perhaps we are not aware about our beauty or our, importance. The great power rivalries make us realize that we have something really special, and that is our Bay of Bengal. And to access the Bay of Bengal has become really important strategically for the great powers. Robert Kaplan, a scholar on geopolitics, mentioned that the water of the Indian Ocean will determine the fate of the nations in the 21st century. And he also mentioned that the Indian Ocean will be center of global conflicts. As a littoral of the Indian Ocean, of course, Bangladesh can offer the great powers an important launching pad to expand their network in South Asia and the Indian Ocean. Bangladesh has a perfect geographical location to secure the maritime trading routes and also the economic growth with large number of young population, Bangladesh role in peacekeeping, and Bangladesh leadership role in the ready-made garments. All these actually make Bangladesh important. Now, the question is, should we join Quad or IPF? As you see, but before that, let's see how China actually perceive this whole Indo-Pacific things. China responded definitely negatively, and Chinese ministers frequently say this is unnecessary, all this initiative, and it will actually, it is a kind of like economic NATO, the IPF, and it will damage the stability and peace in this region. And Chinese leadership opined whatever China has initiated, like BRI or RCEP, are more integrated. And Chinese leadership is ready to offer more opportunity to the countries, for example, like ASEAN countries, to join. Now, the question is, should we join Quad or IPF? What are the benefits or challenges if Bangladesh join? Actually, I raised some questions. I tried to generate the debate. Learned audience will enlighten us. So simply, as you see that Bangladesh joined Quad, it will be a reliable, trustworthy partner for the US and the other allies. And on the other hand, the challenge is also paramount. China has been it has already emerged the largest trade partner, and you all are aware about the investment and its presence just next to us, very close to our border, and how actually China will react to that. China may treat Bangladesh as an enemy. So now the question is actually, what is our national interest? Whether, based on our national interest, we should decide whether we should join, any alliance or not. So let me read out, former British Prime Minister Lord Palmerston said about national interest that we have no eternal allies. We have no perpetual enemies. Our interests are eternal and perpetual. So national interest is so important. National interest can be divided into two: the core national interest and the secondary or subsidiary national interest. So if let me also share, because it is on the media, in Tashkent, a meeting, the Chinese foreign minister said to our foreign minister that China will protect our sovereignty, our integrity. And sometimes IP leaders also say that. So do we have actually any threat to our sovereignty, to our territorial integrity? So ultimately, our concern is what makes them to be concerned about our sovereignty. One may argue that if you're sided with China, then threat comes from IP and vice versa. So, of course, considering the core national interest, it is not the interest of Bangladesh, at least now, to join any security forum, whether it's initiated by the US or by China. So how about IPF, which is economic in nature? Should Bangladesh join IPF? Bangladesh is a sovereign nation, And because of this sovereignty, we have IR experts here. We can, make a treaty or deny to make a treaty. For example, despite having our very warm relationship with India, we denied to make a security pact. India asked Bangladesh to. So this is because we are a sovereign nation, and that's why we could do. However, it is also Bangladesh's choice as a sovereign nation whether Bangladesh will join IPF or not. If IPF can give Bangladesh benefits, then why not? So, thank you. So ultimately, the act of balance may come. Bangladesh has already joined BRI, which is economic in nature. So even if Bangladesh join IPF, it may upset China. However, how much? It will depend on China. But this calculation must be studied. That I mean, how much Bangladesh can be benefited. But as a sovereign nation, definitely Bangladesh has its choice. Bangladesh has already joined BRI, which is economic in nature, and there is no clause in the BRI that Bangladesh cannot join IPF or any other economic alliance. So, yeah. So my concluding remarks, I think I have already mentioned that it is not the right time for Bangladesh to join any security forum because Bangladesh cannot perhaps afford and to join such or Quad or GSI. Bangladesh, as I say, already joined BRI. So Bangladesh should study actually critically what exactly BRI IPF can offer to Bangladesh. Thank you very much for your patience here.
Thank you, Dr. Joshim, for raising questions and giving more ideas so that the forum can discuss those more elaborately. And also thank you very much for finishing it on time. Our session chair, Vice Chancellor, Professor Ismail Hussain has joined with us. So thanks, sir, for coming. Now we go to our designated discussants. In this session, our first designated discussant is His Excellency Mr. Iwama Kiminori, Ambassador of Japan. His Excellency Kiminori is he has now probably joined last year at the end as an ambassador, and also he has served as the Counselor, Permanent Mission of Japan to the United Nations and other international organizations in Geneva. In addition, he was also the Minister, Embassy of Japan in the Kingdom of Thailand, Minister, Embassy of Japan in Germany, Chief of Protocol, Ambassador, and Consul General of Japan in Dusseldorf. So, Honorable His Excellency, Mr. Kiminori, so over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and allow me to say about my name. According to the order, I put Iwama Kiminori, but my family name is Iwama, so please call me Iwama as a family name. But thank you very much for inviting me to very stimulating discussion. And in fact, as the presenter, Dr. Woodin, has mentioned, the Japan is the very, very crucial, important in this discussion, the first session one, because we are, as Mr. Woodin has mentioned and explained, we are the advocate, the first of free and open Indo-Pacific, number one. And number two, as he mentioned, we are the one of the component of the Quad members. Number three, we have been participating in the initiative made by the United States called IPF. So we are Japan is a stakeholder in this three components that Mr. Putin has mentioned. But at the outset, I would like to reiterate that your notion is not from our government's notion. This is not the alliance. Everything is not alliance. This is not the enemy and friends construction. So this is the very first stance of us, and we can give you one by one because since the time is limited. First of all, free and open in the Pacific. You have adequately mentioned about our own ideas that the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has advocated, explained at in Kenya in the TICAD conference, the Tokyo International Conference for African Development. And what he envisaged was the Indo-Pacific in a more broader way, including African continent, as was described in the presentation paper. And since then, there's several developments. As you have mentioned, this notion, FOIP, free and open in the Pacific, was accepted by other countries, especially in the United States. And the United States might have other notion, other concepts. But we are always saying that the FOIP, free and open in the Pacific, is an inclusive concept. And that's why we have talked with ASEAN countries, European countries, Latin American countries about the notion, about the philosophy, about the concept of the free and open in the Pacific. And the core of the free and open in the Pacific of Japanese version is that once the counterpart understands and share the view about the rule-based structure of the international order, and once he or she the country is sharing the importance of the freedom of navigation. In that sense, we say that we share the view about the free and open Indo-Pacific. But in addition to that, if that might be limited to that concept, then it might be it might sound enemy and friends. But the free and open Pacific's important concept is to have a dialogue so that we can have economic growth. And in particular, in terms of Bangladesh, we have been emphasizing the connectivity, and through connectivity, we can have a shared view, shared vision of economic growth. And let me quote one explanation what our Foreign Minister Hayashi recently said at the symposium in November last year. He said in the video message that Bangladesh is located in a strategic point connecting Southeast Asia and Indian subcontinent, and Bangladesh plays an important role in the development of the region. He also noted that FOIP will contribute to not only promote and consolidate basic principles such as the rules of law and freedom of navigation, but also ensure open economic prosperity, peace, and stability through enhanced connectivity, and promote a sustainable blue economy, which Bangladesh values. That's our basic stance that our foreign minister said in November last year. This is an inclusive concept, point number one. And when you talk about, the second thing, when you talk about the Quad is, first of all, not the military alliance. We have a military alliance with the United States. We have a close cooperative partnership with Australia in terms of defense and security. If you want to know more about that, you can see our homepage of the Foreign Ministry in Japanese Foreign Ministry. And we have also the strategic dialogue with the Indo-Pacific, India. But there's no military alliance in the four countries. No, in no way. And as far as I know, we don't have any intention to consolidate such kind of a military alliance. And besides that, I would like to emphasize that the Quad is in the Quad. There are some things that beyond that security issues are discussed. For example, last May, the Prime Minister Kishida hosted the Quad summit meeting, and the issue was not limited to security in a narrow sense. The scope of cooperation of four countries extended to the most important issues at the time, such as COVID-19, development cooperation, and even climate change. So this is a very open forum for four countries to discuss every issues, not only the strategic and security issues. And as far as I know, as a diplomat from Japan, we don't offer or we don't ask any countries to join the Quad. No, it's a four countries the cooperative or the discussing framework. I don't think it's any country. The four countries are asking any country to join or not join. So that's not that this kind of enemy and friendship framework is not. Well, I don't think it's the right description. And finally, about the IPEF. The IPEF is, as I mentioned, this is the initiative made by the United States. So actually, we don't know much about the IPEF. So as Mr. Woodin has mentioned, this is still an evolving process. And we are participating in the discussion. And last week or 2 weeks ago, we had a senior officials meeting in India. And indeed, there was a discussion. But whether or not that might be evolved into economic NATO is another issue. And I don't think it's realistic to go into in the near future, because they are still talking about what they should do, including Japan. So it is very, very premature to think about economic NATO or something like enemy and friend. But as Mr. Woodin has mentioned, it might be an idea to participate in the discussion. This is the very preliminary phase of forming the framework. And some country joined one segment of the IPEF, not the old segment of the IPEF. The discussion is very, very loose, if I understand correctly. So if you interested in joining any kind of economic frameworks, why not joining IPF and RCEP? Maybe RCEP is the fixed framework with the China, South Korea, Japan, New Zealand, Australia, and ASEAN countries. And it is related to tariff and service, the relaxation of the service and so on, and the framework. So this is a rather fixed framework. And if you take a look, if you think that the Bangladesh is elevated to the developed countries, it might be an idea to try to join the RCEP and APEF, both of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Iwama. And I think it's very important, some of the points that he raised, and it's very good for our students and faculties of international relations that the Japan's, because Japan is the main propagator of this Indo-Pacific idea, and that this free and open Indo-Pacific is actually initially it was meant for all inclusive, and it is probably a little bit different also the way the US perceived the Indo-Pacific. So that difference also important to be understood. I know that you have a busy schedule and you might leave after this session. So I just take this opportunity to raise just a question I got from my class, that one of the students asked that when the Indo-Pacific concept was initially been formulated, and there's some of the initiatives have been taken. Was China invited to join in the Pacific? And the student was asking, because he was saying that there cannot be any Indo-Pacific without India, and also there cannot be Indo-Pacific without China. So was China invited to be part of Indo-Pacific?
Thank you, and let me quickly respond. The FOIP, Free and Open Indo-Pacific Initiative, is not the formulation of the team, and not such an concept, but we advocate the idea, philosophy, and we explain to every country. I'm not sure, I have to check the track record of a foreign minister or the prime minister, but we're not inviting any countries. We are explaining our concept to every country, and I think we have already I assume I have to check, but I assume our foreign minister has explained to that kind of notions, concept vis-a-vis China as well. This is not the this is a concept. This is not the alliance.
Yeah, thank you very much. And that's why I do understand why the student has, because his argument was the small states like Bangladesh could be in a better position if US could be part of BRI and China could be part of Indo-Pacific. Then we don't have to have this whole debate and discussion. So our life could be much easier. So that is real inclusion. That okay, so every country who are interested can join. Anyway, thank you very much, Ambassador, for excellent presentation and clarifying some of the Japan's position and differences. Now I would like to invite our another important discussion today, His Excellency Charles Whitley, Ambassador and Head of Delegation of European Union to Bangladesh. So, sir, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Mr. Chair. It's a great pleasure to be among so many eminent thinkers here again at North-South University. I think I must say, as European Union, perhaps we feel like a bit of an interloper in this debate. We only have a very small territorial footprint in the Indo-Pacific region through the French territories. But of course, apart from Ukraine, all eyes, diplomatic, security, political, are on the Indo-Pacific region now. And I think the topics you're deliberating on today, specifically Bangladesh's articulation with the Indo-Pacific, it's very important to look at, the philosophy that underpins Bangladesh's foreign policy. And that philosophy, I think, has widespread appeal. Certainly, it resonates with the European Union. When I think of Bangladesh's foreign policy, I think, of course, of the founding mantra, friendship to all, malice to none. We think also of Bangladesh's commitment to multilateralism, whether that's in the UN itself or through the provision of manpower and peacekeeping, paying the price actually in blood for preserving multilateralism. But also Bangladesh's commitment to regional bodies like BIMSTEC and SAARC, which, even if aspirations aren't always matched by reality, it's important to keep slogging away at the business of regional integration and trying to achieve results in that field. So I think all of these values that are there in Bangladesh's foreign policy can help inform its approach to the Indo-Pacific conundrums that Bangladesh faces that were very well set out in Dr. Udin's presentation. And this perhaps illusion of choice that people try to put forward, a binary choice between China and, or more than a binary choice, China, India, the US and others, perhaps that is a false kind of dichotomy that's being put forward to Bangladesh, because you have your own values, but you also have other partners. And I'd like to say that the European Union, as a long-standing partner of Bangladesh, perhaps our approach to the Indo-Pacific is worth looking at in more detail as a foreign policy issue. I won't go into great detail because we don't have the time, but we have got our own Indo-Pacific strategy. We have our own Indo-Pacific envoy. The 7 areas that we work on through the Indo-Pacific strategy really resonate in our relations with Bangladesh, and 6 of them are directly relevant to our relations with Bangladesh. We have sustainable and inclusive prosperity, green transition, ocean governance, digital governance, connectivity, security and defense, and human security. So all of those, I think, are important for our relations with Bangladesh, but also our relations, of course, with the Indo-Pacific region. And I think 3 things spring to mind when I would try to put forward the desirability of forming a closer partnership with the EU and the Indo-Pacific. And they all relate, I guess, to values and interests, of course. First, the EU is an advocate for international law, the rule of law, and the UN Charter. We're fighting that battle on our own territory now with the Russian aggression in Ukraine, but it applies to our relations across the world and how we do business across the world. Second, okay, we're not the US with a massive military, we're not China with its nascent military, but we are an increasing actor in terms of conflict prevention and stability. And that's reflected in our CSDP missions around the world. We have 17 civilian and military missions that are deployed, but also reflected in the fact we're the largest provider of development and humanitarian assistance. So we're engaging at that level, which does help to preserve and underpin international stability and is, of course, relevant in the Indo-Pacific region. And third, the EU is the largest trading bloc in the world. And with that comes a huge interest in preserving freedom of navigation and open Indo-Pacific. Much of what Ambassador Iwama set out really resonates with how we see the region. And I think it also resonates with Bangladesh. So I think we look to Bangladesh as a growing leader in this region who can influence decision-making, influence the geopolitics. And we see that as an influence for good. And we want to ensure that our partnership helps reinforce that influence. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. And it's also very comprehensive kind of a discussion for our participants here to understand that EU, since it has its own Indo-Pacific strategy and the different principles that you have mentioned, it's very important. And Bangladesh also can also learn something from that strategy, that how you developed that kind of the thing. I know that you also probably will be leaving after some time. So there was also that some interest from our faculty and the students, the role of EU, because EU is also some of the EU countries are already part of BRI also. So how they are making a kind of a balancing between these two. So is there anything learning points for Bangladesh that the way the EU is also having some of the EU countries are actively being part of BRI, but also they are pushing the Indo-Pacific agenda. So do you want to make any point on that?
I wouldn't presume to give Bangladesh any lessons. I mean, Bangladesh, of course, is a very active member of IORA as a chair and so forth. But as you say, we have 2 member states there. We want to join as a dialogue partner with the IORA. So at the EU level, to have more of an engagement with that structure, because it's one of those emerging forums where it brings such a diverse range of partners together that it can have a different kind of discussion, I think, which may have limitations, but also huge potential. So I think our member states are increasingly looking to that forum. Also, frankly, in the absence of any real progress in terms of SARC integration and policy making and so forth, and we all know the reasons for that. And the fact that BIMSTEC is only emerging as another regional regional body. So I think we very much look to these different bodies. And as we're not a huge military actor in the region, of course, the kind of conversations that you're having in those bodies are very important and ones that we would like to contribute to more. So no lessons for Bangladesh, rather a message that we're ready to engage more and are very interested in Bangladesh's positioning. Thanks.
Thank you, Ambassador. So we have 2 more discussions in this session before we go to discussion on BRI. Our next discussion is Dr. Raymond Liu. Dr. Raymond Liu is an assistant professor of political science at North-South University. His teaching and research interests include international relations, international comparative studies of genocide and mass atrocities, R2P and humanitarian intervention, African studies, Africa-China relations, and Chinese foreign policy and Hong Kong politics. So Dr. Liu, over to you.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone. So first of all, thank you very much for CBS and SIPG for inviting me to be one of the discussants in this very timely and important seminar. I'm really glad to be here this morning. And also thank you, Dr. Jashim, for your paper presentation. And obviously, your talk has given us a lot of food for thought. So I think in many ways, Bangladesh has long been an underrated and underestimated country. But the scale of Bangladesh's economic transformation in recent years perhaps suggests that this country is no longer a sideshow in the Indian subcontinent. Okay, and in this context, especially because of Bangladesh's remarkably successful economic transformation, so Bangladesh's status has undergone fundamental changes from being a geopolitically irrelevant country to a key player in shaping the future of Asia. With both the US and China vying for influence in the Indo-Pacific, I think there is no better time than now for the policymakers in this country to think and reflect on the geopolitical value of Bangladesh, as well as to re-evaluate its relationship with other major powers. And this is exactly where the main contribution of Dr. Jashim's paper presentation lies. So I've got a chance to read Dr. Jashim's paper. Okay, it seems to me there are 4 important messages that Dr. Jashim is trying to convey here. Number 1, so Indo-Pacific in nature is a geopolitical space, okay, which is not and should not be monopolized or controlled by any single major power. Okay, number 2, okay, rather than just paying attention to what other major powers think, what Bangladesh needs to consider is whether joining the US-led Indo-Pacific strategy or any other alliances is in Dhaka's national interest. This is because Bangladesh, after all, is an independent sovereign state. Number 3, because since Bangladesh has already joined China's Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI, back in 2016, then in this sense, okay, joining the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, the IPEF, can be understood as another kind of balancing act that Dhaka can do. Okay, and number 4, so while the United States has been trying to persuade Bangladesh to join the Quad and the IPEF, I think Dr. Jashim has actually raised very important questions in his paper. Okay, the question is why actually South Asia is not being explicitly mentioned in Joe Biden's Indo-Pacific strategy. Okay, and then in this sense, what this highlights perhaps is the traditional strategic neglect of South Asia in the eyes of Washington's policymakers. So using Dr. Jashim's paper presentation as a starting point for discussion, so here I would like to just take this opportunity to pose 3 questions to the audience. Question number 1. So while there is no denying the fact that Bangladesh has been successful in establishing good relationships with different countries and major powers through adopting a policy of peace and non-alignment for a very long period of time. But with South Asia, and the Indian Ocean region increasingly becoming a significant site or arena of major power rivalry, the question is this still the case that Bangladesh can protect or defend its vital national interests without alienating at least some of the major powers? Okay, question number 2. Okay, if it is the case that Bangladesh can no longer fully insulate itself from major power rivalry in this region, then does it mean Bangabandhu's doctrine of friendship to all, malice to none will be increasingly hard to sustain or even become unbearable in the future? Okay, question number 3. So since the US-China strategic competition in the Indo-Pacific is expected to intensify in the near future, Okay, I mean, also as Dr. Jashim has raised this very important question in his paper presentation, right? Whether the cost of upsetting US is higher than the cost of upsetting China or vice versa, right? So in this sense, the question that is worth asking here, the third question that is worth asking here is, can Bangladesh still maintain its geopolitical value by adopting a middle ground approach? Or in other words, can Bangladesh still have the best of the two worlds like it did in the past? Or is it the time that Bangladesh may have to come to grips with some tough decisions to choose sides? So I will just simply stop here, and I look forward to the panel discussions and the insights being shared by some other experts and intellectuals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Raymond, and for raising very interesting three questions. I'm sure that when we open the floor after the session 2 and 3, then we'll have a chance to listen from. You can see that we have participants also. We'll have an open floor discussion, so get time to discuss this. So we have also representative from other embassies and high commissions, so maybe we'll get also the views from them. We have the last discussion now for this session, Brigadier General Dr. Sakwat Hussain. So Dr. Sakwat, he basically was commissioned in Army in 1966 till his retirement in 1995 from Bangladesh Army. He was appointed an election commissioner of Bangladesh in 2007 and successfully conducted national and local election during his tenure of 5 years. He authored over 32 books on multiple subjects and over 300 articles. Currently, he is a senior fellow at the South Asian Institute of Policy and Governance of North South University. So over to you, sir, and 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me here and talking on a very important subject that every day we are hearing from either in newspapers or in some discussions here and there, and particularly it pertains to a very important foreign policy aspect of our country. No doubt that we are going through a very critical time as far as the international events are concerned in foreign policy as well, because of the European war. And I don't see that being resolved in 2 to 3 years' time unless one side collapses. And that is going to affect the entire sort of scenario in the whole of world, including the South Asia. Dr. Jashim has presented a very neat and clean paper, and he has left a lot of questions. And I read it a number of times, and I tried to fathom actually where we stand. And although in his conclusion, he said we should still maintain or think of maintaining in the middle path, which is, of course, a very tough decision for a country like Bangladesh, as we have heard, that is gaining importance in world scenario. But I have a few questions that I would raise because I have very small time. Otherwise, I could have talked for some time. The first thing is mind-boggling is the free and open Indo-Pacific. In fact, nobody says who is challenging it, who is the protagonist. Sometimes we hear that extra territorial forces or extra state force. So far, at least as an observer, I have not seen any such except in Somali waters, which was a few years back, and now I think it's clear. So it has to be very explicitly explained to at least to the students, and what exactly the free, fair, open Indo-Pacific that we talk, and what is the threat? Though nobody has talked about the threat, but it is understood. Perceived threat is from the north, that is from the China. Second question that I would like to definitely raise, and maybe it's a longer discussion, is that Mr. Joshim has talked about Robert Kaplan, and I do read his articles and I do have his book. My point is Indian Ocean littoral, indirectly, yes, Bangladesh. But how Bangladesh, in fact, plays a very bigger role in Indian Ocean. Remember that we do all know that Bay of Bengal is mainly surrounded by three big nations, 3 big countries, India, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and of course, part of Sri Lanka, Singapore, and part of Malaysia, if I'm not wrong. Those is the northern Sri Lanka. But Bangladesh is definitely a major user of Bay of Bengal and a major littoral of Bay of Bengal. Now, my question is, how do we contribute, as for Mr. Kaplan, to the launching pad for big powers in Bangladesh, which is so away from the main Indian Ocean? It's Bay of Bengal is part of Indian Ocean, like Arabian Sea, but we are very much in a concave form where Bangladesh is situated. Therefore, this needs to be a clarification, I believe. Then the other question, which could be a big subject to study, what is our geopolitical importance in the context of what, and how our geography gives an importance of the geopolitical, gives a geopolitical importance in the region, as well as in the discussions of maritime and Quad and other things. We definitely have multilateralism, but none has been working. Like we have SARC, and I don't know what's the state of SARC now. It seems to be dormant. We have BIMSTEC, which is not even taking off yet because of the problem in Myanmar. And then, of course, last that I would put a question. I had a lot of questions, but last one is, how are we going to benefit immediately the resolution of the problem that we are facing, and which is becoming complex day by day, is the Rohingya issue. And in the face or in the context of the Burma Act, which has been already pronounced and being executed on ground. Therefore, when we talk of geopolitical importance of Bangladesh, how do we solve that? Lastly, I would say, please note that Bangladesh is surrounded by three nuclear power. In the north, China. In the east, west is Pakistan and India. All of them have got very antagonistic relation. And we are not very far off from the impact of the nuclear issue. We are only 150 kilometers south of Doklam. So all these things remains to me as a very puzzling thing, that how we are that important that otherwise saying, what is it? Do we come out and join a particular group, or we leave our the national interest and remain in the middle, or we prepare to face, if at all, perceptive catastrophe is coming either from the north or in the south in Indian Ocean? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brigadier Sakhwat, for also raising some very important question from security point of view. I just like to mention here that Dr. Sakhwat is also doing a very important research in SIPG on geopolitical shifting in South Asia. And I hope that in this year we will have a final output of the research and might have a dissemination on the topic. Is very important one. So now we will now go to the second working session. Professor Nurzaman, we will come back to you fast when we open the session. Please keep some patience. Now the session is Bangladesh and the Belt and Road Initiative. Our panelist is Professor Shahidul Haq. Professor Shahidul Haq is a professor of SIPG and also currently occupies the ICCR Bangabandhu chair at the University of Delhi, India, and he's also senior advisor on migration and humanitarian policy of IIM Dhaka. Professor Haq served also as the Foreign Secretary of Bangladesh from January 2013 to December 2019. Over to you, Professor Haq.
Good. Thank you very much. It seems all the Indo-Pacific people are leaving. The moment I intend to look at the PRI, that's very interesting and very inclusive. Good. Thank you very much. I would like all of you to sort of shut down your window on the Indo-Pacific for a while and think that there are other things are also happening in the world. It's not the only one. And from that angle, I'll try and come back to you. Now, I'll be looking at the BRI from the Bangladesh perspective. BRI is much larger, bigger project, if you ask me. I think it's one of the largest project ever introduced by a single country. It's a huge. It is 10 times the Marshall Plan. So it's very bold and courageous, especially if you go to the Central Asia, if you go to the Europe, that how it has been linked, you'll see its impact. Good. What are the assumptions? First is that, and from listening to some of our colleagues, I had a feeling that we are at a very critical time, and the thinking concerning the foreign policy and the various alliances is consequential. So it's not as usual, and it's addressed to Secretary Khorshid, that whatever we are thinking or trying to put in the piece of paper will have a long-term impact on Bangladesh. So that's one. How do I do it? So I was thinking that, since government of Bangladesh has already joined the BRI in 2016, and hopefully it will survive another 3 years, and we'll see what the government does after it expires in 10 years, in 3 years' time. So that's where it is. Now, in order to do that, and not only for the BRI, but also for bigger alliances, I wish the ambassador from Japan were here as to why we used the word alliance as opposed to the partnership or forum and other things. We could have explained. There's a specific reason that we used the word alliance, because both the blocs, if you allow me to use the word, both the West and the Chinese are trying to build an alliance system, and this is very well practiced, as Jashim has rightly pointed out. So that's one of the reasons. Now, how a state looks at these kinds of new changes and then decides as to which way it should go. Good. I will skip this. Before I go into that, I think we need to recognize that there are alternatives already in the world to organize both your political functions as a state and as an economic function as a state. What are those? We have Washington Consensus, and we know this is going through difficult patches. Over the years, China has also created their own model, which they call it model. I put it as a consensus, which is different than the system that we are used to, which is mostly liberal, neoliberal philosophy. And China is offering this to the rest of the world, that there are other ways to organize your political, military, and economic functions as a state. Look at it. So that's where the challenge comes from. So the talk that we hear, that it's inclusive, it's exclusive, it is an ideological battle fought in a different platform, not through war. In the Second World War, the whole ideological battle between various forces was fought on the ground. This time it is not. So that's why possibly we fail sometimes to understand it. And some of the Indo-Pacific or Quad or whatever you call it, or BRI are the models of that. So I will not explain it. The only point that I will point it out, that the whole issue of Washington Consensus is that democracy, rule of law, you'll hear that on and off, as opposed to the Beijing, where it is the party, the CCP, that runs the state actually. So it's absolutely a different model. In the Western model, it is the state which runs it, democratically elected. Here you have a party which actually runs the state. And every structure of the state is subservient to the party. So it's a different model. absolutely absent is the human rights issues, as opposed to the Washington consensus. These are the two fundamental differences between the two, and we'll see which one survives eventually. Both are equally good. Now, before Bangladesh goes and looks at its options and opportunities in terms of various alliances, it has to look at itself and see where it stands. And so I've listed a couple of parameters which will sort of give a character to the state of Bangladesh, which is very important. Here we are talking two states. One is China, the other one is Bangladesh. And you'll see when you explain the two characters of the two states, there is a huge difference between them in terms of ideology. So now, given that, would Bangladesh change its fundamental characteristics in order to align with China or not? That's the question. Because when in 1971, Bangladesh was liberated, although Bangladesh was liberated on democratic values, but it opted for a socialist way of organizing its political and economic functions. And over the years, that tilt has been balanced. Now, whether Bangladesh as a state would go through that changes and say, look, we would like to go and try once again the socialist methods. Who knows? We see. So that's the character of Bangladesh. That's where is the fundamental difference in ideology between Bangladesh and China. Good. So having that ideological difference, how do you then come and join BRI? That's the question. It's the whole issue of national interest. Now, what is China? China is a very important country. Let's not undermine it. In every sense of the word, China is the world's future. In every sense. So you have to really reckon with that fact. And I wish I had a little more time to explain China, but I think one kind of word will capture. What is the Chinese foreign policy? It's very difficult to actually pinpoint what is Chinese foreign policy, because Chinese foreign policy is basically the policy that is enunciated by the sitting president, whether it is Mao Zedong or Deng Xiaoping or currently Xi Jinping. So if you analyze the Xi Jinping's policy, is a major shift that has taken place from 2012 onwards. He said, we have been humiliated for 100 years. That's a big narrative coming out. We have also a dream, the way Western world has a dream, rejuvenate China, because we should not be subservient to one. So in this speculation, you will see that there is a tendency to create his own sphere of influence. And he was very clever. He did not go on a war footing. He did not go and coerce anybody. He said, look, I have a dream, which is the BRI dream, through which I want to connect Latin America, Africa, Central Asia, and with China. So that's the dream. And if you look at, if you see some of the statements in the party, which is 150 pages, and you'll see the fascinating argument that he's putting forward. And it's very convincing. He's not saying I'm going to go to war. He's not saying that I'm going to occupy, I'll be colonized. That this is what the opportunity is for you and for me. So ideologically, it's very convincing the way Marx put forward his own thesis long time back. So, but if you look at his foreign policy, you'll see some of the very important elements. What is that? Respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity. So he's actually buying from the neoliberal values, which wasn't there in China before. Non-aggression, it wasn't there before China. So they had done a course correction also. And no interfere in the internal matters, mutual benefit, and peaceful coexistence. So it looks that it's one of the most ideal model that one can think of in today's world. So we'll see how it is in practice. Now, through some of the decisions that we take as a state, in terms of where to join, when to join, how to join, is actually forced upon us by our core values and national interests. You have seen Dr. Jashim has been referring to the core values and national interest, and Dr. Lau has also indicated to that. Now, instead of putting Bangladesh's core interest, I said, let's look at core interest of both the countries and see whether there is a connection. Our core of interest is basically emanates from our 1971 values as of now. Our core values, having said this, both in terms of socialism, communism, and the rest of it, in terms of our constitution, it has remained very pragmatic. And that's why we could do the course correction at various stages. So that's one. If you go to the Chinese one, it's very interesting. Again, the party, again, the ideology, again, the culture and value prominently features out in their core interests. They're not saying I'm going to have 10 destroyers by 2020 in their core values. They're not saying we need a 3-dimensional, 5-dimensional military. No. And these are indeed very appealing core values that China enunciated. Anybody have the patience to read some of the long statements? You'll see it's fascinating to read not only Mao Zedong, Deng Xiaoping, but also Xi. So that's where I'm saying that the Western world, the Indo-Pacific world is seeing a threat to their existence in terms of ideology. It's not in terms of economic interests. So good. I think I'm running out of time. Now, that's where BRI comes in. When BRI was projected by Xi Jinping himself, he said, through the BRI, I want a community with shared destiny for humanity. Who can deny? I want a community, whoever joins, with shared destiny for humanity. Very ideological, very global, very non-transactional, as opposed to Indo-Pacific. Good. Quickly, it has basically two parts. One the sea, the other one is the silk. And this is built on the old Silk Road idea. And if you look at some of the Central Asian countries, literally Chinese goods are now trained to reach Europe through the Central Asian rail and road connection. It has never seen that kind of a development before. Yellow. There are certain principles. If you look at the principles of BRI, and that's where is the difference between Indo-Pacific and BRI. Indo-Pacific, they say it's a concept. It's a loose concept. Take it or leave it. Take it, slash it. Take 25%, rest 75% you don't take. So they have given the flexibility. What is the principle of organizing states? Is there. But as opposed to that, in the BRI, you will see the enunciated principles. Now the question is whether these principles are in practice or not. That's the question. That's where you should be asking questions. But in the piece of paper, it's very well written, very well written. These are the focus. And interestingly, you will see, although the Chinese thinks it is a project, but the first objective is the policy coherence. So what is the policy coherence? It's basically coherence that could be drawn between your ideological understanding of the state. That's what it is. That's what they're asking. They're not saying so, but that's what they're asking. That when you take the BRI projects, when you take and join various initiatives, you try and draw a coherence in terms of our policy and your policy. So it is an ideological initiative. That's how I see it. How it is financed? So far, I was looking at various sources, and in fact, today the Foreign Policy magazine has put a new article. I was very lucky to have it before this session. It was 1 trillion they have so far invested in 144 countries. 1 trillion is a hell lot of money that they have invested. Now, they have went ahead and invested the money, but now they are, and which I'll come back to it, that they're facing some hurdles. There's a number of reasons which I'll come back. I'll not explain right now. I'll go to the conclusion. Now, in South Asia, you will see 4 large components of BRI. And these are very good connectivity ideas. That's how South Asia gets connected with China, of course. And Bangladesh is preeminently positioned to be party to at least 2 of them, if not 4. That's why Bangladesh is important to China. That is why the Western world is so worried that Bangladesh might shift, not lock, stall, barrel, but shift towards BRI and China. So there has been a very critical observations, and especially coming out of India, our very strong and friendly neighbor. And that actually creates the dilemma that Bangladesh has. Bangladesh so far has managed that from 2016 in joining and then explaining to our neighbor that why Bangladesh is important. And but India's whole critical reservation about BRI is that it doesn't respect sovereignty, because it's one of the CPAC passes through disputed land of Kashmir. And they think, this whole CPAC could have avoided that. And it did not, because it wanted to humiliate India. That's their explanation. The second one is that they're also saying that while BRI projects are undertaken, there are compromises made, lack of transparency and things like that, which we are seeing also. Sri Lanka is one of the examples. So that's the 2 big objection, but it is a sovereignty and security related objection that India is raising. So you can have address possibly others, but not this one. Now, Bangladesh has always been in favor of connecting with the world. So that's very clear. And when we say connectivity is not only railroad, connectivity of ideas comes back to the ideology and the rest of it. Sorry, I'm going a little fast. Now, here comes, what is the approach that possibly Bangladesh should be looking? There's a dictum, friendship to all and malice towards none. But this does not say that you cannot tilt. You certainly can tilt. And this is something I have started saying, that in 1971, Bangladesh had this dictum, even by the Bangabandhu. But when it got implemented, we were tilted towards the communist socialist world. It wasn't perfectly balanced. Although non-aligned movement was there, but it was not perfectly balanced. So there was course correction in the process, and we know that. I don't want to bring that debate here. But it was done. Then it got tilted towards the Western philosophy and ideology. Now, are we looking at another tilt? So when people say that, we have this doctrine, fine. But within doctrine, you have a flexibility. That's what you're going to exercise. Sorry, I will pass these things. Hopefully, if people are interested. What are the big projects? Khurshid sir is here. So I'm sure that he will bear me out. Single mooring, one of the most exciting project. The Konofuli Tunnel. No one was there in the world to help us except China. So you have to recognize when you need something and when there isn't a taker, then you certainly do. This is the what you call Anwara EPZ in the making. I've come to the concluding thoughts. As I see, and as everyone sees, the world is an inflection point. It's a concept which has been borrowed from physics. So the way the world is run is no longer be run in the same line. It will either go up or will go down when you have the inflections. Now the question is, when the world goes up or down, what Bangladesh should do? Bangladesh cannot go straight, because then you are out of alignments, out of everything. So that's one. Second, it is true that for quite a long period, the world has been exploited and dominated by first Britain and then by United States. no doubt whatsoever. And we also face the same. Now, having said this, one critical issue is the whole issue of should we join a defense pact or shouldn't we? In our history, we had one pact with India in 1971. And when it expired, even the Awami League government could not get all the people's support to have extension of the pact. So in general, the Bangladeshi people are against any security pact as of now. Now, would it get changed? Of course. If Bangladesh is attacked today by any forces, tomorrow you will see that people are saying, no, we have to have those friends with us in our fight. So would that happen or not? I leave it to you to judge. So that's one. Now, sorry, we don't have time to sort of compare between Indo-Pacific and BRI, but certainly if there are questions and answers, we'll come back to this. So the BRI has gained some ground, but it has slowed down after spending $1 trillion on various projects scattered. And because of the COVID and because of the Chinese slowdown, it has slowed down. But you have to always remember it is Xi's signature project. Xi will never let it go. So it is currently being reevaluated. They are being more selective and faced with the criticism for being not transparent enough, not going in the interest of the local people. The Chinese are also looking at their model and making some changes, especially their big learning was Sri Lanka, because they really faced a great deal of difficulty. So what I see looking at some of the examples is that they're recalibrating their model of BRI. And we also thought that Xi, after getting his third term, would be more kind of a forceful, bold, and aggressive. That's not the case. He has made a major course correction when his people said that no longer COVID restrictions, wholesale lift of COVID restrictions. So that's a major indication that even leader like Xi could change if he sees his own existence as a threat. So that's something good. That means there is a hope that in the BRI model, there could also be some changes. Now, sorry, sir, how do Bangladesh look at it? I have jotted down some of the points. In the question and answer session, I will try and see. Bangladesh is, in many sense, it's a very critical position because all the three alliances, I will continue to use the word alliances, that is in the making, Bangladesh is almost in the center. I mean, had Bangladesh been in Latin America, we wouldn't have been bothered about Indo-Pacific or BRI. So that's important. We cannot remain isolated, which I'm sure I'm very happy that Lau has mentioned it. We cannot isolate. We cannot say that, look, I don't see anyone. No, you just cannot do that, number one. Number two, you cannot say that I'm non-aligned, I'm neutral. These are today's a vague concept. It's no longer relevant. You cannot be neutral. You cannot be non-aligned because your whole non-aligned structure has collapsed. So what do you do then? That's the question. And I don't have an answer. But I know how, I'm sure ministry has it. So what you do? So what is the current position? Is the whole issue of balancing. In every sense, Bangladesh has to be a good gymnast to do the balancing. So it is how we practice our diplomacy. It's not the policy what we have, but how you show it to the world that this is what we have. This is what we are going to do is very important. Number one, your narrative has to be correct. Number two, it has to be coherent, consistent. Put your 2 foot on the ground and say things. Don't jump on the ear. Now we often say multiple balancing. So Bangladesh will end up today doing a balancing with China, simultaneous balancing with India and with the United States. I'm keeping Japan because Japan is relatively easy because of its focus, but no longer maybe because of their growing membership of Quad and others. So we end up multiple balancing at the same time. And earlier we were balancing between India and China. Basically, we didn't look at United States. Now, since the United States is coming back with its own agenda of democracy and rule of law, we have to also balance them. So it's a multiple balancing that we need to do. How do we do that? I think Khurshid sir will give the answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Shahidul Haq, and I'm sure you're making Ambassador Khurshid's life more difficult for answering so many questions has been raised, but I'm sure that our today's honorable guest will definitely shedding lights on that. So we are running a little bit short of time. We'll go very quickly now. We have two designated discussions on BRI. The first discussant is Dr. Lalufar Yasmin, Professor and Chairperson, Department of International Relations of University of Dhaka. Her area of interest are gender in peacekeeping and peace building, secularism, religion and international relations theories, terrorism and violent extremism, and also Bangladesh and South Asian affairs. We are also very happy to say this that Professor Lalufar also taught at SIPG as an adjunct faculty before. So over to you, madam.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me in this very prestigious gathering. We have a very timely discussion on Bangladesh's policy in a world where we are seeing things are changing very fast. And why this is happening this way? We are right after the COVID, and also during the COVID, when we learned to take it slow. We were all stuck and within our houses, and then when things opened up, it seems that things speeded up to a level that we have not seen before. It's also because of the way we approach people, the way we are bombarded with information every second that we are to take up a decision right now. We have to think about something right now, and we have to, make a decision right now. So international relations is not away from that, and we can see the gaze of the world as it's shifting towards the east. It's also shifting towards South Asia. One of the previous speakers said that South Asia suffers from traditional, strategic neglect. And that is not something we have seen in the case of South Asia in the past few years, and especially in the case of Bangladesh. If we see the pattern of engagements of great powers with Bangladesh from 2015 to 2020, and in 2021 and 2022, we see a significant difference in terms of not only volume of policymakers from around the world that have come to Bangladesh, but also the level and their level of experts that have come to Bangladesh. It has significantly changed. So at this particular juncture, we also hear this particular question: should Bangladesh join IPEF? Should Bangladesh join IPS, Quad? Or why Bangladesh is a member to BRI but not member to other these sort of forums? As is very clearly said by the speaker, China is the future. This is something I think very few outside of China and very few coming from the West lacks in understanding, because China does not play a very slow game. The article that is referred earlier. Actually, there are a couple of articles on China in last few times, especially when President Xi Jinping, he went to participate in Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and he was invisible for a while, and there were rumors of political change in China. And then a very interesting article was published in Foreign Policy where it stated, and it discussed that there's a lacking in understanding China, because we tend to see China from a very Western perspective. We have very little studies that are done from inside China about their strategic culture, about their political culture, about their societal culture. Therefore, I beg to disagree that the article that was written by Christiana Lu that talks about China is not up to its mark. China is revising, China is correcting its course, but that does not mean that China is actually, taking its BRI less seriously than it took before. So a couple of other things that I would like to sort of point out in this connection is that a number of, previously and also here, we are talking about Bangladesh and Bangladesh's policy choices, friendship to all, allies to none, and Bangladesh is tilting towards a particular bloc in certain time. And what will happen now in this particular juncture? In this entire discussion, I find that we have this tendency to talk about or see Bangladesh as a small state. And this is something I must have to sort of completely disagree with, because I've been to Mauritius last 2 weeks, and I've seen it's a big country, and not big enough as Bangladesh, but it is hosting 1.3 million people, and extremely sparsely populated, and 1.3 million Rohingyas we are hosting in Cox's Bazar area in our southeast region. So given a country that is hosting 170 million country, it is a fallacy to begin by talking about Bangladesh being a small state. This is a mindset that has drawn us back only, that has it has not let us see the potentials that Bangladesh has. A number of speakers have said that Bangladesh's strategic location, where Bangladesh is at the middle, connecting the Southeast Asia, and in its west, it is connecting India and other countries. This strategic location and geographic endowment that Bangladesh enjoys, through which Bangladesh can be a home to regional hub of economy and commerce, and it can provide connection to Nepal, Bhutan, and Northeast Indian region. These are some of the equations we often forget to bring in the discussion, that why Bangladesh is being sought after. So another interesting point that was sort of mentioned I mentioned previously is that Bangladesh has joined BRI. This is an economic forum, and Bangladesh is never going to, so far, Bangladesh does not intend to join in security cooperation. And look at one other example, Colombo Security Conclave. Once again, I'm bringing the talk to the Bay of Bengal and Indian Ocean, that the Colombo Security Conclave is seen to be a forum for dealing with non-traditional security threats in Indian Ocean region. So there are 4 members. Bangladesh is there as one of the observer state. Bangladesh has been asked to be a part of CSC for a couple of times, but Bangladesh has never intended to join CSC. Why? Because the word security is there. So this is something very difficult for others who come here and who deal with Bangladesh's sort of foreign policy forums. This is very difficult for to understand that we have a kind of allergy, if I may put it this way, to join in any forum that has the word security in it. So this is one other thing that I think we are talking a lot, but it's very difficult for others to understand that why Bangladesh would not take a side. And then another very important point is that look at the locational connection. Parag Khanna, who has talked about connectivity, that in this age it is important. Connectivity is the new arms race. It is important not where we are located, but it's important who we are connected with. So for Bangladesh, who is bringing direct fruits of development, we need to look into that. And from that particular perspective, we can see that how China and how these regional sort of forums, and these have a particular benefit for Bangladesh. So Bangladesh is willing to connect with any country that can bring particular economic sort of benefit for Bangladesh. And Bangladesh is, as we have seen last year, as we have seen in 2021, Bangladesh has emerged as agenda setter at the regional level. Bangladesh has emerged as an agenda setter at the, in fact, global level when it comes to issues pertaining to Bangladesh's interests. For example, in 2021, the UN Security Council, UN General Assembly resolution brought against, brought condemning Myanmar military junta. Bangladesh abstained from voting because it did not reflect Bangladesh's concern on Rohingya issue, and it was redrafted with the help of our permanent representative at the UN, and then Bangladesh voted for it. So we often forget all of these instances. They may seem very, not many in terms of number, but Bangladesh is gradually asserting itself. And there are reasons for which all these international actors, China, they are coming to Bangladesh. So instead of, talking about Bangladesh hedging against, the two sides, Bangladesh balancing with India, China, America, it's time, I think, we start a new narrative about Bangladesh that no, there are interests, they are coming and we are dealing with them. We are not hedging, we are not balancing. It is in their interest to come here. So I would like to take this, different kind of take on this whole sort of discussion that Bangladesh is not a small state. It is strength is adequately reflected, which is seen by the others. And that is why we have seen a number of scholars coming to Bangladesh last year talking about Bangladesh as a rising middle power. And it is time that Bangladesh seizes the moment. Bangladesh seizes the moment. So this is something I think and I'll just stop in a minute. And we have been talking about, who to connect, who to not to connect, and the issue of non-alignment. Actually, if you see a report on Indonesia published by Chatham House, it was a couple of months back, which is talking about how Indonesia is sort of dealing with the big powers. And here the term non-alignment is meant in a very different manner. Whenever we hear the term non-alignment, we go back to Bandung. We think about, the Cold War era politics, but it is the Cold War era politics of non-alignment was based on equidistance from both the superpowers. But the 21st century's non-aligned movement is based on, if I may sort of play with words, is equi-connection with the great powers. It is not equidistance, but it is equi-connection with all the powers. And that is why Bangladesh is following, some have coined this term, a dual track policy or dual connection policy, that Bangladesh is willing to work with all the parties. China is a reality. So is the reality of West and other countries who have been the power to be in the past century. So we need to reevaluate Bangladesh's position and connection with the rest of the world from a very positive mindset. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Lailufai Yasmin, for a very passionate speech. And I do understand that Professor Lailufai raised this issue also before, that Bangladesh should not be termed as a small state. And yeah, absolutely understandable, the logic behind it. And that we have so many achievements, and now the new narratives need to be created. But also we should not overestimate us also. It's the same way, we should not underestimate us, but we should not overestimate and do not put us in a place that we need to understand the geopolitical dynamics. For example, in terms of BRI and Rohingya crisis and others, still I find that for China, Myanmar is more important than Bangladesh. China will not abandon Myanmar for Bangladesh, and it didn't, and it showed it very visibly. So yes, we should create new narrative. I fully agree with you, but with a cautious and right estimation that where we are geopolitical. So we are again at the last kind of discussion from Sanjida Shahabuddin. And then we have only one speaker left. We'll be there. That's Professor Lailufai was mentioning Indonesia's experience on balancing, and our speaker from Malaysia will be talking about ASEAN aspect, and then we will come to the end of the last session. So Sanjida Shahabuddin, she's a research fellow of Bangladesh Institute of International Studies. Our areas of interest are regional and sub-regional cooperation and politics of competing connectivity and initiatives of geopolitics. So 5 minutes for you, please.
Thank you very much for inviting me in this August gathering. At the beginning, I would like to congratulate Professor Hawk for his very insightful presentation. We all know that he has a vast experience on this topic because he was the Foreign Secretary when Bangladesh joined BRI. He knows very well, and we have just heard from him about the main features of BRI and its progress in Bangladesh. So in the presentation, Professor Hawk has nicely articulated how China came up with the idea of BRI, its principles, areas of cooperation, and how this mega project is working in South Asia, and also highlighted some of the controversy related to its transparency. Thus, instead of discussing what is BRI, I would first like to focus on the reason why Bangladesh joined this mega project. We all know that Bangladesh is one of the participating countries of this mega project. And when this mega project was launched in 2013 by President Xi Jinping, it was the only mega infrastructure project that showed tremendous potential for addressing the world's infrastructural gap. 10 years after the inception of this mega project, we see that there are a number of connectivity strategies popping up, and being an emerging middle power of the Indo-Pacific region, Bangladesh is also facing a delicate situation of defining its position towards other emerging connectivity strategies. So in this regard, questions are always coming up as to why Bangladesh joined this mega project. To answer this question, I would like to flag one simple reason, and the reason is economic. Bangladesh's main strategic logic behind joining this mega project is purely economic, and I hope Professor Hawk will wholeheartedly agree with me. In fact, in one of her speeches, our Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has clearly articulated her vision by saying that our diplomacy will be economic diplomacy. But before this official statement, our high commissions, missions, embassies abroad had already been directed to work on implementing economic diplomacy. In that effort, during that time, it was recognized that taking part in any kind of economic development initiative is useful for Bangladesh economic growth and development. With that context, Bangladesh joined BRI with the hope that partnering in such kind of mega connectivity initiative would help Bangladesh journey of infrastructural development. Although Sir has shown in his presentation that China pledged to invest $40 billion in the form of bilateral assistance and joint ventures under the BRI cooperation, but in reality, what we have seen that Bangladesh received a small amount of investment so far for only 5 projects under BRI cooperation. However, these projects are at good progress, and we all know that we are going to have our first river tunnel very soon. Now, I would like to highlight what BRI has experienced so far in the last 10 years. If we look back and see that the last 10 years journey of BRI, we will see that although this mega development initiative started with a massive pace, it soon became grappled with debt distress issue. We saw this initiative has been accused of debt distress in several African countries and in Sri Lanka. And there are many arguments, of course, and counter arguments on the issue of BRI's relation with this kind of controversy. Then we have seen the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. This pandemic also brought significant challenges for BRI. China has closed its borders to the rest of the world since January 2020 by cutting off most of its in-person work. And that was a major obstacle to the efficiency of BRI projects. As a consequence, we have seen that negative sentiment about China and its BRI projects has grown in many parts of the world as well. The past 10 years of BRI is considered as the first phase of BRI. So in the first phase, this mega project faced several significant hurdles. This can be divided into 3 types. The first hurdle is called the cooperative rivalry. According to the experts, the massive pace of BRI all over the world has brought the situation of cooperative rivalry. In this situation, what we are seeing that the major powers are proposing several connectivity strategies in the areas of infrastructural development and common prosperity. This significant number of connectivity strategies which are being proposed by other major powers are mainly to counter China's influence through BRI. The second obstacle is the worldwide economic downturn due to the pandemic. The pandemic-induced global economic slowdown brought the situation of intractable recession that created tremendous shocks and setbacks for BRI. And the third obstacle is China's own economic challenges due to the pandemic. As a result, Chinese entrepreneurs and investors become less capable and interested in global expansion. However, we know that President Xi has proven himself as a different kind of Chinese leader. According to his vision, BRI is a road of prosperity supported by industrial cooperation, financial systems, and infrastructure connectivity. The enormous scale of the BRI is a reflection of his confidence and ambition in claiming the global preeminence. Thus, after securing the third term in the office, it is anticipated that President Xi will not give up his pet project BRI. And after the 20th CCP, we have seen that the BRI is back on agenda with the announcement of the approval for infrastructure projects in mainland Southeast Asia. After almost 3 years, we have heard something new about BRI. The new infrastructure projects announced by China include a $1.6 billion expressway to be developed from Phnom Penh to Bebe at the Cambodian-Vietnamese border. So after 10 years, BRI is going to enter a new phase. In the second phase, experts are assuming that instead of building mega infrastructures, the aim of BRI will be to focus on building soft infrastructure. Areas such as health, climate, and digital connectivity will be gaining more attention in this phase. The second phase of BRI is also going to be a recalibration phase where the hurdles of the first phase will be addressed. Now, being a partner of BRI, Bangladesh needs to reap its benefit in the second phase as well. By a wide margin in the first phase of BRI, Bangladesh has been able to successfully secure advantages without encountering any controversy. As Bangladesh's reason of participating BRI is to advance the country's growth and development, I think in the next phase of BRI, Bangladesh may have some room for exploring potential in developing its soft infrastructure. Since we have a tremendous development gap exists in the areas of health, climate, and digital connectivity, I think the new phase of BRI will have something in this regard where we may explore potential. Besides, as there are instances of debt in distress with the mega projects, therefore, I would like to echo with what Shahidul Haq sir said, that our government needs to critically analyze and contextually understand potential BRI projects to see if they align with our national interest, and needs to be watchful in the coming days and make careful judgments before signing any financial deals under this cooperation. Having said this, I would like to end here. Thank you.
And we are now going to our last session, and this is only one presentation there. So we have Dr. Mahbubul Haq, Faculty of Law and International Relations of University Sultan Zainal Abidin with us. Dr. Haq, are you there?
Yes.
So
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I cannot hear me.
Dr.
Yes,
Haq,
yes,
did
can you hear me?
unmute yourself?
Yes. I unmute us already. Can you hear me?
We can't hear you. We can see
No,
the
but
slide.
but it is unmute is already. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yes,
Okay.
we
Go
can
ahead,
see
go
you,
ahead.
but we cannot hear you. You are speaking, I can see, but we cannot hear you.
But sir, I think in my side is okay. It is not mute. It's okay now.
Unmute করেছিল। ওই যে unmuted তো ওই যে আপনার।
Huh? I think it's unmuted.
Yeah, can you just mute yourself again and try to
Yeah,
unmute?
mute is already.
Yeah, I do understand. We can see you, we can see the slide, but
Yes.
we cannot hear you.
But unfortunately, I don't know what happens.
I think what you can do, you can restart your computer or laptop again, and in the meantime, we go for the open session. If it is fixed, then we'll come back to you to save that time. Is it okay, Dr. Rao?
Okay. That's
Yeah.
fine. That's fine.
Okay, so
That's
just to get some feedback also from our other participants. The floor we are opening now for maybe 10 minutes because we have the most important speeches left. We want to listen from the Honorable Secretary. So if there is any observation or, yeah, as a question specifically and comments. Professor Abdul Rauf Khan.
Thank you very much. I will just refer to the excellent presentation by Ambassador Shohidul Haq regarding BRI. Actually, but this is a common concern of Bangladesh of engaging constructively with all our alliance partner in Asia Pacific as well as this one. Now, we see that the commitment that Xi Jinping made in his visit in 2016 has a huge amount of money, but it's doling out very small amount, as is the experience of Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and there's a lot of frustration there, a lot of criticism out there. Now, at the same, very recently, I see that China has expressed its interest of having SEPA model, comprehensive economic pact, like India. So my point is here that will this give a clue of bringing these two partners together, India and China, because they're having the same model? And then is that the way that we can get some larger sum of money from China under BRI? Thank you very much.
We'll take a few questions and then come back to the panelists. Professor Mahbub.
Thank you. I don't know because I came later. Perhaps it has been taken care of. Recently, United States has passed this called Burma Act, and President Biden has signed this. It has a military connotation. Actually, that's the point. The implication of this, how it will going to affect this region, particularly Bangladesh also.
Yeah,
so I would appreciate. Thank you.
Brigadier Sakwat mentioned it. We will come back to him about that one. Yeah, Professor Imdad.
Well, I don't have any exact question. I have small observation. When we refer to the Chinese BRI, probably we need to look back the historical background of the Chinese, mindset. During the 19th century, all the Western powers, especially under the leadership of Great Britain, they had two wars with China, the Opium Wars during the mid-19th century. And China was very much protectionist during that time. They were trying to block the supply of drugs from India's subcontinent by the British government during that time. And China was forced to become a sleeping tiger, by drifting drugs from India. And this China has turned these days into a roaring tiger. So that's the transformation that happened with the Chinese people and their, in their mindset, and the way they are dealing with the Western countries and Western powers. In fact, they are very much motivated and backed by their old mindset and experience, what they faced during the 19th century. So that is my one comment. And other comment is the US interest in the Asia Pacific. It started with the President David Truman during the post-Second World War era to expand their business interest over this region and also their military, build influence over this region. Okay, thank you. That was the comment I was, interested in.
Yes, Mohsin, please.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Saeed Shahnawaz Mohsin. I actually have a few questions, but I'm just going to stick with two, and later maybe when I get some more time and opportunity, I'll go for that. My two questions are basically just on an observational note. Shahidul Haq sir specifically, sir. Would you agree with the perception that whenever there's the issue of, as Japan's ambassador was talking about it, the alliance does not mean basically to have a competition whatsoever, but whenever something is being offered by the West, we actually get this psyche kicked in that they're actually looking for either with us or against us. And that has been actually a direct and categorical narrative by the Western powers on certain levels, but we don't get the same perception when it comes from the East. Would you agree with that percentage that we never actually receive that kind of a psyche, that whenever something is coming from the East or the Chinese, they're not asking us to basically give up something and then go with them. This is always basically more of a collaborative situation. So that perception, does that play a role in terms of our psyche of trying to connect every dot, whatever is happening in terms of the international relations that we have? Whether that particular dots are supposed to be connected or not, that's also a question. And the second question is in terms of, for example, I just relate the example of the Quad. It is Quad, it's by default 4. What would it mean by joining other countries? It will become 5, then it will become 6, it will become 7. What exactly would that mean? it doesn't really make sense on that particular note. And when that particular forum actually did come into being, I don't think it was the 4 members who actually called Bangladesh to join. It was more of the media question that whether Bangladesh would actually join or not. And the Chinese actually ambassador at that point made clear that Bangladesh shouldn't be joining that. So I have not seen, at least in my own research, whatever small that it may be, the Chinese have actually come forward to telling us you can't do that as long as it does not hurt their interests and their regional interests directly. But we have seen that coming from the West. Given the fact that Bangladesh has always tried to maintain a rules-based international order, and we have been able to maintain that because of the mere fact that we have been very text-based. Whenever there was a clear text on what's being offered and what we are supposed to do, what will be our role, we have actually joined in or basically declined. But until then, there was no text properly, concretely proposed to us. We have actually gone into discussions, dialogues. We have never actually committed to anything.
This is not your speaker or my problem.
Okay, so based on that, would it not be more difficult for Bangladesh given the current global dynamics where the rules-based international order is actually collapsing and polarization is becoming more and more powerful? How do you think that Bangladesh would actually be able to maintain the fact that, okay, fine, we will not go on this side or tilt on that side? We would want to maintain our own value-based international relations ideology. How difficult do you think that Bangladesh will actually be faced with that? Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mohsen. I think Dr. Mahbub is already joined again and his system is now working. Dr. Mahbub?
Yes, could you hear me? Yes.
Please start.
Okay, just a moment, please. Can I show my screen? Good afternoon from University of Sultan Jainal Abidin, Malaysia. It's my pleasure to discuss with you in these sessions. My topic is the Bangladesh and the ASEANs. Actually, I would like to pick up my discussions from what actually Dr. Josimuddin completed, not completed, just ending his discussions about why Bangladesh is more important at this moment. Yes. I would like to start from here. Bangladesh found itself as crossroads of 2 worlds, Southeast and South Asia, Hindu Muslims Asia and Buddhist Muslims Asia, and aims Indo-Aryan and Mongolian races. Bangladesh is the only one country among the South Asians who is culturally close to Southeast Asian countries, such as I'm giving you small examples from that. In Bangladesh, we also celebrated the Pohila Boishakh and Chaitra Sankranti. It's a very similar programs in Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, and the roots of the Thai language is the Pali, and our roots, the Bengali languages, come from the Sanskrit Pali, and then you can find in the Malaysian, Indonesia, many places, the manuscripts and cultures and some rituals coming from the Ramayana, Mahabharata. It's very similar in South Asia, especially the Bangladesh. So in this context, we, yes, from the race context might be different, but culturally, and we are also some, our staple foods in rice in Southeast Asia. If you look at the staple foods is right, and you can say the South Asians finished when the South Asia is near to complete, and when the Southeast Asia started. And culturally, we are more closer compared to other South Asian countries towards Southeast Asia. So, but at the same time, so we have the big problems with the Southeast Asia, especially at this moment. Currently, Bangladesh carries more than 1 million Rohingya refugees, those we call officially displaced Myanmar peoples, forced displaced Myanmar people. Yes, this is one of the gray areas of our relations with the Southeast Asians. At the same time, okay, this is the things. And despite all these barriers, Bangladesh can establish strong bilateral and multilateral relations with ASEAN countries. In addition, it will be benefited for the both sides. And in addition, Bangladesh can learn how ASEAN countries dealt with major powers, which is today's seminar's main focuses. Okay, so now then the questions is coming, and what is the relations between Bangladesh and ASEAN? Actually, that have not, because Bangladesh is not a member of the ASEANs. and not accede to any ASEAN agreement except for the Treaty of Amity and Cooperations. But on the other hand, Bangladesh can use its geographical locations to make relations with other ASEAN countries. And Bangladesh's present economic growth can attract for ASEAN members to accept Bangladesh as ASEAN dialogue partners and eventually a member. Asian highway and other connectivities could not work as much our expectations because of the conflict, and then we know the 21st century is genocide conducted in the Rakhine states, and Bangladesh is the first victims of the genocide. As a result, it is very difficult for Bangladesh at this moment to enter in the Southeast Asia through the Rakhine states of Myanmar. This is the dilemma, not I'm saying that this is the reality at this moment. So we have a lot of expectations of the regional connectivity, but it was not much work because of these situations. ASEAN countries' positive attitudes towards stronger ties with Bangladesh for their geostrategic interest, not only from our side and also from their side, they have so strong interest to make relations with the Bangladesh. Okay, this is the beginnings of the discussions, and then now I am shifting the how other regional and major powers benefited from the ASEAN. So let's give you examples from India. On last year, India and the ASEAN upgraded their relationships as a comprehensive strategic partnership, what they call CS, the highest prior relationships the grouping has with countries outside of the bloc. ASEAN gets its relationships with the United States, the comprehensive strategic partner on the same day. So you can understand about the India's situations and the Americans. At the same time, China and Australia are also the other two countries share as like a comprehensive strategic partnership with ASEAN. So this is from the Indian side, is the landmark development between ASEAN and India. Okay, so other things we can look. ASEAN's elevations of the India's status to that a comprehensive strategic partner is recognitions of India's growing role in the wider Indo-Pacific regions. Because India does not have the major powers, but we cannot avoid as a regional power. And India has also important roles, especially in the Asia-Pacific regions. India's total trade at this moment with the ASEAN's, I think so, the 42.3 billion USD 2021-22 financial year. This is over 10% of India's global trade. So we can understand how India can benefit from the ASEAN. Okay. Then Indian scholars argue that it was possible because of their lookist policy. But I have some things we'd like to discuss with you. What is the lookist policy? Lookist policy from India has lookist policy. They have started during the Manmohan Singh time. Bangladesh also started lookist policy in 1990s, I think so. Other Bangladesh government officials and scholars knows it very much well. And after the established of the parliamentary democracy systems in 1990s, most of the government, those are coming into power, they emphasize the lookist policy. Okay, the lookist policies, we are also getting benefit. Lookist policies not only for the Southeast, also Far East also accommodating in here. Malaysia has also lookist policy. How Malaysia is also benefited from the lookist policy, that is also very interesting. Because Malaysian lookist policy is looking through from the Korea, Japan, and China. Though there have some differences. So lookist policy is also varied from the country to country. Bangladesh definitely has some lookist policy that is might be not the similar with the Indian lookist policy.
Dr. Mahbub, 4 minutes left.
Okay, sure. Then so this is the lookist policies situations. So now we are going the regional and major powers, how they benefited from the ASEAN. Over the past few decades, ASEAN has considered China as its primary economic partner, and the US it is primary security guarantor. So this is the two things we can find in the relations, economic partners and security partners. That has been at the heart of the ASEAN balance, which underpinned the stability that had to impressive regional economic growth. However, in recent years, due to various supports from the United States to isolate China and preventing Chinese interventions, China's involving in Southeast Asia. At the same time, Chinese robust challenges of the US hegemony, this balance has become increasingly difficult to maintain from the ASEAN countries. At this moment, the US has enhanced multilateral initiatives such as the Quad, engage actively with the ASEAN countries and its individual members, not only the ASEAN, individual members, Indonesia, Vietnam, Singapore, Malaysia, and also has effort US, Japan, and Korea. I think you can say this sort of balance against the China. So in ASEAN regions, China has problems. China has problems with the territorial disputes of the South China Sea. China claims its sovereignty over the sea and a lot of mineral resources, and they had competitions with claimants, other claimants by the Brunei, Malaysia, Philippines, Taiwan. So United Nations also taking this chance to use against them. But United States has also other challenges. Chinese assertive territorial claims, efforts by conducting freedom of navigation operations and blustering support the Southeast Asian partners. But look, Southeast Asian partners are not coming on these confrontations with the China. That is very, 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 very interesting points of these discussions. Okay, the next point, actually, what I would like to mention in here, from the ASEAN scholars and ASEAN civil societies, very much cautious about these balancing situations, what they are now looking. Southeast Asian countries, especially ASEAN scholars, emphasize on economic recovery, sustainable development, while resolving disputes through the diplomatic measures or settlement, any disputes through peaceful settlements under the present international framework. Okay, then other Southeast Asian scholars, especially from the what I found from the National University of Singapore, Yusuf Isak Institute's director, what he's saying, the most Asian nations are reluctant to take a side and have sought instead to maintain good relations with both, and the peaceful, orderly environment in Southeast Asia of the past 30 years has come to end. So it means it is very clear they don't want to take the single position, especially when I discussed with the Indonesian scholars. They are very keen in this science. They know we'll take benefit from the both sides. We would like to smartly handling these matters, not take positions. Because if you look at the Cold War time, they were friends, either Soviet Union or America, but in this time, they don't want to take any positions rather than try to get benefit from the both sides. So this is one of the main discussions of my presentations today. Okay, just lastly, I would like to focus one point. In this sense, in these areas, Chinese ethnics and Indian ethnics has strong presence, especially in the Singapore, Malaysia, and few other countries. They are also playing very good role as like an ambassadors for their ancestors' countries. In this sense, I would like to say the Bangladeshi diaspora community has strong presence in few countries, not many countries. They also can promote Bangladesh relations with the ASEAN, apart from the geopolitical interest. So this is an opportunity for Bangladesh to make good relations. Actually, what we found that India get benefit from the ASEAN. So yes, we also the next door neighbor from the ASEAN, so we can get this benefit from the ASEAN, despite there's some problems with bilateral problems with Myanmar. So it is possible. This is our expectations. And lastly, I would like to say, not take one-sided positions in the race of major powers. Actually, what we learned from the ASEAN countries, it should be very much smart approach from our side. Thank you very much to give me time.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's our last station. We would finish now very quickly before we go to our today's guest. So there were few questions for Professor Shahidul Haque and one question for Brigadier Sakwat about Burma Act. So I come first to Professor Shahidul Haque.
Thank you very much, Dean Rob, for raising a very important questions. Currently, Bangladesh is negotiating FTA both with China and India. Now, with India, the type of FTA that both the countries are looking forward to is a third generation FTA where investment, trade in services and other things will come around. It has been based on a study done by both the countries. So that's the background, but still it has to be negotiated with India. Simultaneously, Bangladesh was also negotiating with China on the FTA for about 1.5 years to 2 years. And at this stage, the China showed interest that they would not like it to be a typical FTA, but they want it to be a bigger than FTA involving technology, investment, and the rest of it to build on whatever they have invested in Bangladesh. So the question is how Bangladesh will do the negotiations between India and China. The advantage to go with China on a larger FTA frame is that China is also a member of RCEP. So by being a member of, by being in arrangements with the Chinese, we will get an access to RCEP. So here we will have a sort of a larger kind of a benefit to draw from. But in case of India, we have a sort of a much larger interaction across the border. So if that border trade comes into some kind of a structure that will help. One of the issues that has often been raised between Bangladesh and India, that whenever there is something, India stops import-export of things and thereby creating a huge crisis in Bangladesh. So hopefully those kinds of things could be regulated in a much better frame if we have a SEPA. The document that I have seen in the SEPA, which has been signed between both the countries, is extremely important. But in addition to drawing coherence between various provisions, the most important aspect that I figure out from there is the whole issue of movement of people. In all the 4 areas, that appeared the critical aspect of a better SEPA, that what will happen for people also to move in the context of trade, investment, and the rest of it. So that's something important. I'm sure these things will also come in the China issue, because China has also a very restrictive policy of immigration. So, you know, eventually this people's movement will appear as a stumbling block for having a SEPA, both with China and with Bangladesh. Thank you. Thank you for raising the questions. Dr. Sakwat.
Very much, Dr. Mahbub. I didn't speak about the Burma Act yet. I thought that SIPG may also have some time to discuss about the Burma Act and its impact. Very quickly, it's already created a complex situation in Myanmar, and particularly we are interested in what happening in Rakhine. At the same time, we are seeing a phenomena in our hill tract in a very strange place, because I served there and I know that area has been very peaceful. The KNA and the CNA, plus the Sharkia, that is and if I may link with it, the K3C, which Burma Act talks about, supporting K3C EAO, Ethnical Armed Organization, And if you look at that K3, it's Karen, Kachin, Kayan, and C is Chin. And look at their demographic breakdown, you'll find Chin is very much with us in some portion in Rangamati and Bandhavan area. Chin is 85% inhabited by Christians, quote unquote, and connected with the Mizoram, which is also Christian dominated state of India. And then these three, one is with the Thailand, that is the longest insurgent area, that is Karen, and then the Kachin, which is just south of China, and then of course with it is the Kayan, who are now very, very big. So these are the 4 areas that have been picked up in Burma Act. And there's $1 billion which is they're going to give to NUG. And the recent development, if I talk about, Myanmar authorities have decided to arm their civilians. That means going to be a real bloodshed or a civil war in that sense. Now, how do we connect it? How do we see? See, read this, the KNA, Kuki National Army here in Bandhavan, which is led by one Nathan Baum. He is from Baum area, that is the Ruma area, and he is not found within that area. He is believed to have fled to Chin. That means there is a Chin National Army connection. That is the Chin insurgency. And Baum's, by the way, is also a Christian majority area. So you add all these things, you will find that in the process, what do we do? Do we go with the Burma Act, or we maintain the way we are going to resolve our Rohingya crisis? It's very much going to affect the Rohingya crisis, but I'm not yet sure whether Arakan Army is also going to be party to it. And there are indications that Arakan Army is softening up with NUG, and which may be party to this K3C. Then we have a bigger complex problem in the looming in that area. That much I can tell you right now.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a very important discussion. Maybe SFG will organize something on Burma Act and role of Bangladesh and the regional parties. So now we come to the most important part of today's discussion, that our special guest, Rear Admiral Mohammad Khurshid Alam. Rear Admiral Mohammad Khurshid Alam, he is the incumbent Secretary, Maritime Affairs Unit at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Bangladesh. He is a former 2-star Admiral of Bangladesh Navy. He is also the chairperson of IOC Regional Committee for the Central Indian Ocean. He also served as the president of the International Seabed Authority Council. So over to you, sir, for your speech.
Respected Bismillah Rahman Rahim, respected chair of today's seminar on Bangladesh's approach towards emerging alliances in Asia, and the director SIPG, and also all the distinguished panelists and the paper presenters who have done it before me. Of course, what I will be talking today is on my personal basis, not as the Secretary of the Maritime Affairs Unit of the Ministry. And also, as we understand that we are talking on the Chatham House principle, so that should stays back. So most of the discussion, as I heard, was of course limited to 3 areas. That is IPS, Indo-Pacific Strategy, then BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, and also the ASEAN perspective. All the 3 very important perspectives today, and that's why probably you are right to say that what is the emerging alliances in Asia.
Let me say that all emerging alliances has a context. And that context, if it is forgotten, if it is not taken into account, we might run into difficult problems. So if we look at the context of today, I might take you back to over 200 years back, when Napoleon formally warned and said that China is sleeping now, but for when she wakes up, she will check the world. Despite this early warning, West actually did not pay heed to that, So that's one thing which was done in a very long time. And you can say from the initial century 1 to around 17th century, the two largest economies are the India and the China. They are the two largest economy, It is only in the last 200 11, that actually alienated most of the Muslims. And West also actually forgot to see that when China joined the World Trade Organization, 900 million additional force actually came in to join. And that's how reduced the income of the West, which is actually went unnoticed for many of the, a Machiavellian minimalist approach at that time is in force. Well, in this part of the world, of course, Muslims are living in a way, well, you all know it, I'm not going to discuss. But if you look at the 12% of the West if they think they can control the 88% of the world population about the terrorism and others, I think that's not going to help much. So that is also to be taken into aspect in our sort of the atmosphere, what we are talking here. Liberal professor, philosopher Isia, he reminded us that the goal of Machiavelli was to promote virtue, not evil. So what is the Machiavellian point? It is this, what is the best way for the West to constrain the new rising powers that are emerging? And the answer is that the best way to constrain them is through multilateral rules and multilateralism. And this is where is the point. We don't see much of multilateralism these days. That's another difficulty probably we should take into account. In fact, no one disputes that United States will remain one of the world's leading military powers as well as economic powers for the foreseeable future. But it is also obvious that the power is shifting all over the globe, and the America's grip are really slipping. In some places, it has, in the initial stage. So nations like India and Brazil, they of course deserve their place, and still they are not getting it. They should be in the Security Council, but because of the many things, probably it is not coming up, So if you look at one of the aspects of the IPS is the trade we have discussed. If you look at the trade with China, even with the ASEAN countries, was only $10 billion. And then it brought to $40 billion. United States had around $40 billion. But if you look at in the last 20 years, the trade has become $800 billion with ASEAN countries, 10 ASEAN countries and the China. So how do you expect that 800 billion trade will be forgotten by these 10 ASEAN countries, just looking at probably America? Even if you look at America, Brazil and USA, the trade is only $300 billion. So even that aspect is probably not very attractive for our thing. Of course, there is Ukraine-Russia war. We really do not know how this will play about. It is up to Europe to see whether they want to have a peaceful Russia or an angry Russia, or a different Russia, or an integrated Russia. We have actually 3 democracies here. So what West is trying to divide is between democracy and autocracy. But if you look at India, is one of the biggest democracy, 1.4 billion people, then followed by Indonesia, another biggest democracy. You don't see them, that their place is rightly given even today. So multilateralism is the only way out for countries like who are following the sort of question we are facing today about the IPS and other things. So China is going to, there's no doubt that China is going to have the world's largest economy and a very powerful, sophisticated military. It is uncomfortable, but sport for America, which is not used to sharing power and fears that China's interests and objectives always align with those of Washington. Even if neither side wants war or conflict. That's true. But there are going to be inevitable collisions and consequences for the world as China tests the lines of power with the US, and the US finds its national ego offended by Chinese power to stay in the game and avoid a tragic collision with China. The US just cannot sit back and hold the power it has in the world. It needs to reinvent the terms of its re-engagement. It has to do some global deal making with China and also with the rest of the people, because if you leave out China and America, 1.4 billion and 356 million, and this, out of 8 billion people, there are about 6.3 billion people. So those are not stupid people. Those 6.3 billion people are being commanded by intelligent leaders, and they are also intelligent people. So I'm sure they will take a good decision. So that is the reason for Bangladesh, we have to actually take this context in our formulation of our policy, that how we go about it. Because these are the hard realities what I am talking about. And these hard realities will continue to hunt us, whether, as somebody said, that we should be going to the IPS or we should be joining the other things. If I talk about BRI, yes, when BRI was being initiated, there was ferocious, sort of talks from the Western world, developed world, not to join. But 143 countries have joined. There are only total 193 countries in the world, and out of the 143 countries have joined. Now, coming back to the IPS, the many have said that why we don't join the IPS. IPS, as very rightly Professor has said, that it's not a club. Nobody has asked us to join so far, even not Bangladesh. Yes, there are countries like, Europe, France, Indonesia, and also many other countries. They have some sort of outlook for the IPS, what they think about the IPS. But there is no platform like this, okay, you sign and you are become member of the IPS. It's not yet. Even the sort of definition, the demarcation, up to which point is the IPS, that has not been decided, because Japan says it is up to east of Africa, America says it is up to east coast of India, and India says a very small area about the IPS. And India only says it is a Indo-Pacific initiative, not Indo-Pacific strategy. So for Bangladesh, let me say personally what I feel is that, of course, this region has become the global growth center. There is no doubt in that. 74% of the container actually originates from this area. And the business is all from this area. And the commerce and technological innovation are also taking place. So Bangladesh, to be a developed country in 2041, a modern, knowledge-based developed country by 2041, we should be relying on the smooth functioning of trade and commerce. That is what is our important, that we are a trading nation. Even last year, we had $110 billion of trade. So that's why we need to have trade. We need to have free and open passage in the area. But only there are some issues. So we need to have some guiding principles. What we are thinking, then what should be our guiding principles? First of all is our father of the nation, whatever guiding principle he has given us, that friendship to all, malice to none. That should be number one. We should not be choosing between these two. Second guiding principle should come from our constitutional mandate. Our constitution says very clearly, what should be the relations between the other countries. And then, you see, if you say rule-based, that's a problem. There's a problem with China, and the word rule-based has a problem with many. But if you look at so far, all the IPS things, they have all said rule-based. Now, what is the rule-based? Rule-based means your municipality rule can also be a rule-based. Why America uses rule-based? Because America is not a party to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. That allows America to actually go through somebody else's 12 nautical miles of territorial sea, which is a sovereign area of all the 141 coastal countries. But America, since it is not a member of the America, Turkey, Greece, and few other countries. So they are not member of the UNCLOS, so they do not follow. So UN Charter does not say much on that. So even saying UN Charter doesn't become a rule-based one. That rule-based could be your own set of rules of your own country and giving you that sort of ideas. So that's why we would say that we will not be satisfied only with the UN Charter, but also with the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. And of course, we will definitely like to, constructive participation in the regional and international partnerships, cooperation for the promotion of sustainable development, trade, investment, technology, peace, security, including cybersecurity. So this will be more or less our guideline. Depending on that, we hope that Bangladesh will be having its IPS, maybe an outlook, not vision, because that's what we would look at it. And that's what we would also see, that we are not actually giving up the 4 guiding principles we would need to follow for the economic development of this country, so that by 2041, we have to develop. And for that, we need money, and the economic development is paramount. And for that, trade is also a very important part of our transaction. And for trade, free and open Indo-Pacific is, there is no problem on that. We would agree on that it should be free and open, especially the navigation. So with that, I will try to end because it's already over time. I will also need to go for another one from here. So thank you very much for listening. I don't know whether I have been able to do justice or not, but that's what I have been allowed to speak. Thank you very much. All the best. And I thank all the organizers for calling me, and also to all the audience. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you very much, Rear Admiral Mohammad Khurshid Alam. And I think this is an excellent kind of presentation, especially the context that you say. That when you rightly mentioned that without keeping the context in mind, we'll not understand. And the way you describe the global economic history and now how it has been transforming and been changing. So I'm sure that the Bangladesh government and also the policymakers in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they are considering all these context, constraints, opportunities and challenges. And as you say that we are hopeful that there will be an Indo-Pacific outlook from Bangladesh. And that's necessary, absolutely, that whether we join one alliance or not, or partially join here or not, but Bangladesh needs a vision or outlook for Indo-Pacific and also other regional kind of a thing. So thank you, sir, for giving us time and also giving a comprehensive presentation from foreign policy point of view. We are at the end of the event, and now we'd like to request our session chair or Vice Chancellor, sir, to give his remark. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Professor Tawfiq. From the rich papers and richer discussions of panelists, what I can gather is the approach to emerging alliances in Asia will be